It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, a beautiful wedding surrounded by friends and family. But for one bride, the dream turned into a nightmare when an uninvited guest, a local cop, stormed the celebration with shocking aggression. The officer, known for his troubling behavior, targeted the groom, a black man, with violence that left the guests stunned and horrified. What should have been a joyful union was overshadowed by chaos and heartbreak. But this bride wasn't about to let her special day end in tragedy. As the dust settled, she made a vow not only to her husband, but to herself, to seek justice and hold the officer accountable. What followed was a relentless journey of courage, determination, and a twist that no one saw coming. How did she turn the tables on the man who tried to ruin her wedding? Stay tuned to find out. The bride, still in her wedding gown, replayed the chaotic scene in her mind. The officer's actions weren't random. He had a history with her husband, though the exact details remained unclear to many at the wedding. Some whispered about previous run-ins, others speculated it was a racially motivated attack. But one thing was certain, this wasn't just an isolated outburst. As the groom was rushed to the hospital, the bride faced questions from stunned guests and her own burning anger. Who was this officer really? And why had he targeted them on their special day? The bride's family, torn between fear and outrage, urged caution. But she refused to let fear silence her. Determined to uncover the truth, she began piecing together the officer's past. What she found revealed a shocking web of abuse and corruption, fueling her drive for revenge in the most unexpected way. As the bride dug deeper into the officer's background, she uncovered a disturbing pattern. Complaints of excessive force and racial bias trailed him for years, yet he remained on the force. Local authorities had swept these incidents under the rug, protecting him instead of the community. She realized their wedding wasn't just a personal attack, it was a symptom of something much bigger. Meanwhile, the groom, recovering from his injuries, wrestled with guilt. "I should have seen this coming," he admitted to his wife. He revealed a tense history with the officer, stemming from a past traffic stop that had escalated unnecessarily. The bride's anger only grew. This man had abused his power for too long, and no one had stopped him. But the officer wasn't the only one hiding secrets. As word spread about the wedding incident, the bride began receiving anonymous tips, each revealing more about the officer's connections and those protecting him. The bride knew she couldn't take on this fight alone. With the tips piling up, she reached out to a local journalist known for exposing corruption. Together, they started connecting the dots, uncovering how the officer had used his position to intimidate and silence others. Each piece of evidence painted a darker picture, a pattern of unchecked power that stretched further than she had imagined. But just as they were getting closer to exposing the truth, strange things began happening. The journalist received veiled threats, warning him to back off. The bride noticed a police car idling near her house late at night, its presence impossible to ignore. It was clear someone wanted her to stop digging. Despite the fear, she pushed forward, fueled by her love for her husband and her growing desire to protect others from suffering the same fate. Then, a mysterious letter arrived at her door, a letter that would change everything. The letter was anonymous, but its contents left the bride frozen. It revealed that the officer hadn't acted alone that night. Someone higher up had tipped him off about the wedding, urging him to intervene. The message warned her that the corruption ran deeper than she thought, naming individuals in positions of authority who had played a role in covering up his misconduct for years. The bride shared the letter with the journalist, and together they verified its claims. What they found sent shockwaves through their investigation. Not only was the officer protected by powerful allies, but these same figures had a history of discrediting anyone who challenged them. The stakes had just gotten higher, and the danger was no longer just about justice for the wedding attack. It was about unraveling a network that thrived on silence and fear. But just as they prepared to go public with their findings, the journalist vanished. The bride was shaken by the journalist's sudden disappearance, but refused to give up. She decided to take matters into her own hands. organizing a community meeting to expose everything they had uncovered. The room was packed with people who had experienced or witnessed similar abuses, their stories painting a vivid picture of a system built to protect itself. She shared the anonymous letter, the officer's history, and the names of those who had shielded him. The crowd's anger grew, but so did their determination. Just as the event reached its peak, the officer himself stormed in, flanked by a few colleagues. For a moment, the bride thought he was there to silence her. But then, in a shocking turn, one of his own colleagues stepped forward and handed over key evidence, a confession implicating the officer and his higher-ups. It turned out the letter had come from someone inside the department, tired of the lies. The bride's fight didn't just lead to the officer's arrest, it triggered an investigation that dismantled the corrupt network. But the final twist came later. As she reflected on her journey, she learned that the anonymous whistleblower had been present at her wedding all along, watching silently as the chaos unfolded, knowing it would one day lead to justice. In the months that followed, the bride and groom worked to rebuild their lives, this time with a renewed sense of purpose. The officer was convicted, and several high-ranking officials were removed from their positions as the investigation exposed years of corruption. The community, once silenced by fear, began to speak out, inspired by the bride's courage. Her wedding day, once a painful memory, became a symbol of resilience and justice. Reflecting on the journey, the bride realized how much strength it took to fight for what was right, even when the odds felt impossible. Though the scars of that day remained, she and her husband found healing in the support of their community and the changes they had sparked. Their story became a reminder that even in the darkest moments, standing up for justice can bring light, and that sometimes the most unexpected people can help turn the tide.